أجمعين أما بعد. I just got a message. He said أنا مسؤول. Last time we had talked about the hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where he said أمرت أن أقاتل الناس حتى يقول لا إله إلا الله. And we said that there was a discussion between which two famous companions? Abu Bakr and Umar. And what were they discussing? What was the khilaf over? What was the difference over? Okay, mani zakat. Those individuals who didn't pay the zakat. And we called that time immediately after the khilafah of Abu Bakr. It led into what series of wars? What do we call them? Hurub al-Ridda. And we said that this terminology posed a little bit of a problem because what?
There's two groups.
Right, there are two groups, and when it doesn't necessarily mean to apply to an apostate, right? Somebody who has left Islam. It said it's somebody who rejects, right? And that's probably a better way to go back on something, and that's the best way to deal with it. And we said that there are two major groups. What were those two groups during the Hurub al-Ridda that Abu Bakr had to fight?
The people who didn't want to give
Right, that was one group. The people who didn't want to give zakat. And what was the second group?
false prophets and prophets.
Jay, that was under a larger category.
People who left Islam.
People who left Islam. And the people who left Islam, there were two types. What were the two categories of those people? One of them was the one you mentioned, right? Those who followed the false prophets. And what was the other group?
Went back to their old
Right, they went back to their old ways. They went back to paganism. And the second group were the people who didn't pay the zakat. The first group is what? Are they Muslim or non-Muslim? The first one, the ones who followed the false prophets, and the ones who went back on Islam. They're non-Muslim, right? These are clearly kuffar. And the people who didn't pay zakat. Technically, or yes?
They're Muslim.
They were Muslim. How do you guys know?
No flat-out rejection, or you're opposing the...
Oh, because they didn't take their property.
Ahsant. They didn't take any war booty, right? They didn't take any war booty, and that's a clear sign that those individuals were still Muslim. So when we talk about ridda, the problem is we get caught up in the wording, we get caught up in the terminology, and we call them, and we tend to translate them as apostasy wars, when probably a better translation or more literal translation would be like the war of rejection, right? Like, so for those groups of people who actually rejected, whether they rejected Islam or whether they rejected paying zakat. And was it a rejection of zakat, or what was the problem? What exactly was the issue?
I think it was a rejection of giving it.
The rejection was giving it to the Imam. And why was that an issue? Why is that a problem? Like today, do we give our zakat to the leader?
Yes.
We give it to the IRS. That's zakah. No, that's been khiyar al-mal. It's actually something the Prophet ﷺ specifically said against. Unless you know how to game the system, you know what I mean. But that's a different discussion. Inshallah, we can talk about. Yes.
Wait, what was the question?
The question is that okay? These individuals didn't want to give their zakat to the Imam. Obviously you guys don't give me your zakat, right?
Because it's important to recognize
You
the
should.
state above the tribe.
Right. So the problem was that these people were still in the tribal system, and the reason that they actually left Islam was what? For most of them,
because of that issue.
it was because of tribal reasons. So even the people who left Islam and went back to pagan religion, why? It's because their tribe was on that religion. And even the people who followed Musaylima, they said themselves, "Na'rif bi annahu kadhab." Like, we know he's a liar. So why did they follow him?
Use him as a leverage against the...
Political reasons?
Tribal reasons.
Tribal reasons. Ahsant. Do you see the pattern here?
Tribal.
It's all tribal. Like, the reasons that they went back on the religion was tribal. The reason they accepted their false prophets was tribal. And the reason they didn't want to pay to the Imam was tribal. So here, in order to subvert this idea and to remove this idea of this tribalism, Abu Bakr said, I'm going to take the zakat even if I have to fight and kill them and wage war. Right? He was willing to do that. And even Abu Bakr, even Umar radiallahu anh, in the end, he submitted. He said no. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala opened my heart to help me realize that Abu Bakr was actually right in taking that stance and taking that position. Tafadhal.
Because you had mentioned maybe some tribes would have been angered by the idea that they pay zakat goes to a different tribe.
Right? Yeah, because that's part of the problem. It's like, okay, well, if they're not giving it to the Imam, who are they giving their money to?
Tribal chief.
Or it could be going to the tribal chief, right? That's one place. but or it could be going to the people who are within the community or within the tribe itself, so that the money never goes outside those circles. But that's not the function of zakat, right? That's not how zakat is supposed to be. Even the purpose of zakat. Why did we talk about it last time? Why do we give zakat? Huh?
Purify our wealth.
It's to purify our wealth, right? Is it to abolish poverty? No, like 2.5% is not going to take care of the world's poverty, right?
Jeff Bezos.
Even if Jeff Bezos, let's say, what is his value today?
It's gone down, so let's say
It's a billion, right?
Elon Musk. How about that?
Elon Musk, Tesla's coming back, right? So, but let's say how many billions are these guys worth?
Less than a trillion.
Well, of course, less than a trillion. Thank you.
Together,
153 billion. Okay, so 153 billion. Some of that's net, right? That's not cash that he actually has on hand. Liquid. It's not liquid. So he's not going to give zakat on all of that, because a lot of that money is going to be tied up either in investments.
He was 320 billion in 2021.
Tesla stock dropped.
Wow,
So,
it's like halved.
That's what
Yeah, I mean, it's halved and still,
but it's all
I'm still, yeah. So like these are all assets that he, because even if he liquidated them for 1/10 of the value, right? Let's say he liquidated everything today and he gets 1/10 of that value, you're still looking at like $30 billion. What's 2.5% of 30 billion? I don't have my Alexa.
Like 750.
750 million,
Yeah.
right? $750 million. How many families can you distribute $750 million to at $50,000? A family, is that a reasonable, livable amount? Would you say for a year?
Well, for America. But
For America, for the rest of
in like other countries, it's $200.
sure. Okay, well, he's in America, and we'll take the opinion that you have to give it.
You're tribal.
You have to give it.
You don't want to move that
You have to give it. You have to give it locally. Allah yahdik.
15,000 families.
You give it 15,000 families,
That's it?
So,
and this is the richest person in the world giving his zakat. What is the population of America?
333.
Yeah, it's close to 350 million, right? And out of that 350 million, it's said that, I think they did a survey, 80% of Americans live month to month.
Yeah, something that's true.
And the person who lives month to month in Islam is called what? He's called a miskeen, right? Or like, yeah, I always confuse the two, so don't hold me to that one, all right? Right? There's a difference of opinion, or it's a difference of a confusion, right? So the miskeen is the one who lives month to month, right? Versus the faqir, who he can't even make it, right? He's actually in debt. So if we're saying that you have a vast majority or a good chunk of the population that's actually eligible, and you're only able to help 15,000 families for a year, it's not a system that's meant to solve poverty. It's not. And even zakat itself, who gives zakat?
Orders.
Like people who are, yeah, I mean, that's like my negative way of kind of like portraying it, like people who are hoarding their money. But if you think about it, zakat is only given from people who actually have liquid assets, right? Like you have to have liquid money that's available to you. Otherwise, and someone might be like, oh, okay, well, what if you spend all your money? Is that a bad thing? Maybe for me as an individual, but is it bad for the economy?
Beautiful.
It's beautiful for the economy. Why? Because if I go buy a car, who's benefiting from that purchase?
The car dealership.
Right, the dealership's benefiting,
Employees.
the salesman's benefiting, the finance manager, their families, right? The
state.
right, the state gets a cut, right? In terms of taxes, you're talking about the assembly lines, like where those vehicles are built, the CEOs of those corporations, anybody who's involved in the process, right? So there are a lot of people who are actually benefiting when I give my money back into the economy, and when I don't give my money, that's when I'm taxed 2.5%. You guys following? So it's always important to contribute. So even when I have money, I should always do my best to invest it. I should do my best to invest it. Just life lesson for everyone. Scared, huh? So you know why the rich don't get taxed?
Because they never do.
They donate
like real
everything.
sales.
So donation's a big part of it. Also, write-offs are a big thing too. So for example, if there are certain vehicles I can buy. If I buy, like, for example, a $120,000 vehicle, and I make payments on it, so that means I don't have to pay $120,000 up front. I'm making monthly installments on it. that whole $120,000 that I'm using for my business, I can use as a write-off.
Also, like financial education.
That's
People,
yeah.
even if they have money in their bank, they don't really know.
They don't know what to do with it, right? So financial, like being financially literate is something that's really important, and it's not one of the things that are taught in school.
And it's harder than
Yeah.
expect.
It's not like simple financial literacy. I don't think it's
Well, the ICE tax
yeah.
code, I should say.
yeah. Like I mean, so the thing is, when it comes to like the tax code, yeah, there are things. But the thing is, when you reach a certain income, what do you start doing? You hire an accountant,
Oh, is it?
right? Like you get a faqih to work for you, right?
So, yeah.
So you hire an accountant. Why? Because what is his job? To find all the legal loopholes, right? And that's their job, is to find those legal loopholes to get around them. And you know, it's I'm not here to talk about whether it's good or not, but if there are, I'm obligated to preserve as much of my wealth as I can, right? I should not be destroying my wealth. I shouldn't volunteer my money to the government. They usually don't do a good job with it. And huh?
Always.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I could say maybe a few select programs that I'm okay with.
With one hand.
Huh?
You can count them with one hand.
Yeah, you can. You actually can. But saying that, I think that individuals, they spend their money better than the government does. America, interestingly enough, it's the most generous country in the world. I don't know if you guys were aware of that. In terms of like American citizens and individuals, they give a higher percentage of their wealth in charity than other countries in the world, comparatively, and it's by far. It's not even close. So some of the programs that I do applaud here, United States probably has some of the best special education programs in the world, like very honestly. Like yes and no. Like, so the GDP and all those things, there definitely are things that do play into the wealth side of it, but it doesn't explain the charitable side, right? So, because the thing is, there are certain charitable foundations that you do have, which in turn kind of benefit from themselves. So, like the Bill Gates Foundation, you know, what did they do? They donated a lot of money into COVID research, and then they bought stocks in injections. Just saying, you know. So is there a way to game the system in that way? Yes, there is. There's always ways to do that, but say that, huh? Be financially educated? Yes, I agree. No, I mean, I would say, if anybody asked me, like, okay, what are the next institutions that Muslims should work toward in the United States? Like, you know, we have masajid, we have schools, we have funeral homes. I would say banks. Like, I think financial institutions are very important. It's a good way to channel wealth. And it doesn't require like investment per se, right? It just requires people to make deposits. I think it's better that Muslims deal with the interest than letting someone else handle it. What you do with it, you know, obviously you figure that out later, but at least that way you can channel the money in positive means and in ways. Over here, Imam Muslim, he puts this in Kitab al-Iman, this hadith. Umirtu an uqatil an-nas. I've been ordered to fight the people until they say La ilaha illallah. He puts this in Kitab al-Iman. Why didn't he put this in Kitab al-Jihad? And I want you guys to think about this in light of the previous ahadith that we took. And what is the common theme that we've seen in the previous ahadith? Am I making you guys think too much? تفضل. Okay, the La ilaha illallah, sure. You're definitely getting close. What else?
I guess Imam Muslim here is making a distinction about paying the zakat is not the same as saying La ilaha illallah. Because of the previous one, he said an instruction to Mu'adh bin Jabal.
Mm-hmm.
Or Jabal.
Jabal.
No, was it Mu'adh or was it?
It was Mu'adh, yes.
First make them say La ilaha illallah
Mhm.
and then pray and then
Zakah.
And so then in the next hadith it talks about sort of these people that are not paying the zakat, but they're still Muslims.
Anyone else?
Let's talk about the 5 pillars. And the essential
Okay.
part.
You're right. He said what? What was the last thing you said?
The essential.
Right. What is essential to be a Muslim? And that's what this hadith is, right? These individuals, how are they being defined? They're being defined by the minimal traits or the minimal characteristics or the minimal actions that they did that still allowed them to be considered Muslims. And because they were considered Muslims, like, so being Muslim, does it prevent you from being jailed or fought? I want you to think about this. Just because I'm Muslim, does it mean that I cannot be jailed or that I cannot be fought against? No, it doesn't mean that. What it does mean is that I cannot be taken as a slave. I cannot, my property can't be stolen, et cetera, right? There are other rights that are associated with that. But it doesn't mean that there can't be consequences for actions that I do. Make sense? Because at the end of the hadith he says, what's that? Illa bihaq, right? That none of these things can be taken except with due right. So for example, in the case of murder, is there blood money that is to be paid? Absolutely. In the case of theft, is there not wealth that's to be returned? Well, al-khilaf, right? Depends on if you're on the opinion if the cutting takes care of the issue or not. But anyway, I mean, there's a right that needs to be returned, right? There's a right that needs to be returned, and just being Muslim doesn't protect you from those rights being returned, and that's something that's really important. So this idea of what is it that makes a Muslim, and this is what Imam Muslim is talking about. Like, what is a Muslim composed of? Like, what does a person need to be defined as a Muslim? And that's something that's really important. And you just having sometimes just these small signs, or just saying La ilaha illallah, right? These are enough for me to trust that person. So if I come across anyone in the street, for example, and they say to me, Assalamu alaikum, I automatically assume what? That they're Muslim, right? This is the first assumption that I should have until what? Right, until it's proven otherwise, right? If someone says to me, Assalamu alaikum, wa alaikum salam, yeah, I'm a rabbi at the local synagogue, right? So at that point, they'll be like, no, he just means, somebody who follows the Rabb, like Rabbi, I mean, like, it's a stretch. But at the end of the day, it's like, okay, I will deal with people according to what they present superficially, because I cannot judge what, right? I can't judge their intent, and I can't judge what's in their heart. And this is actually a very, I would say it's a more lighthearted approach in how we deal with one another, because the moment that someone shows me any element of Islam, I treat him as a Muslim, and there's no need for me to what? To verify. Ahsant. Yes?
Only a sample question. So, what if there's a girl,
Mm-hmm.
and she looks non-Muslim, talks non-Muslim,
Yeah.
dressed non-Muslim, her name is Maryam, or Aisha. What do I say?
Nothing. I mean, the thing is, a person has to show something about Islam, right? She puts her hijab on, she prays. Is there any reason for me to assume otherwise?
No.
Forget Maryam. Let's say her name was Jenny, right? Is there any reason for me to assume otherwise? If I see somebody praying, I automatically assume what? That they're Muslim. If I see someone on Hajj, right, do I need to walk around and be like, excuse me, akhi? Like, what I mean? Like, these things don't require any type of verification. Somebody is showing something min shi'ar ad-din, right? He's showing something concerning the religion. Even somebody who's breaking fast with us, right? Sometimes there's Muslims who sit down and break fast with us, yes? But if I don't see anything to the contrary, there's nothing for me that gives me the right to assume anything other than that. Like, this is how we deal with people. And that's how we should deal with people. Now, over here, as a whole, like being in America, most people I come across, I'm going to assume what? They're non-Muslim. Why? Like, Muslims are a minority, right? Muslims are a minority here, but it's not like I'm going to go to, for example, where's a good, like Morocco, right? If I go to Morocco, I'd be like, yeah, I don't know if these guys, No, you assume everybody's Muslim, and it's the same thing. Like, that preponderance is something that is meant to actually put our dealings at ease, because we're going to deal with those people appropriately, and there's no reason for me to assume otherwise. This idea of having shak, of having doubt in your brothers and sisters, it actually brings this hard-heartedness, and it brings this darkness to the heart. That is something that needs to be avoided. And you'll find that people who are constantly doubting others, well, is he really Sunni, or is he like a person of innovation, or is he a person like this? This person will never be at ease. And you'll find that this person is always going to be constantly doubting others. They're never going to be at ease. They're never going to be happy around others, because they never assume the best about those who are around them. Now, does this mean that we're supposed to be naive and trust everyone? There's a difference, right? There's a difference between giving someone their right and trusting them. Now, tafadhal.
Yeah, we do have this issue on the women's side when a sister comes with a hijab.
Yeah.
And I heard that they would say, Astaghfirullah, sister.
Yeah.
What are you doing in the masjid and you don't
Yeah, I mean, it's a simple answer. The same thing you're doing, right? Like, it's like this judgmentalism. You know what I mean? Like, it's just I'm above everyone and I can judge everyone. Because the thing is, if I'm constantly doubting other people, what does that say about me? Right? If it makes me feel like I'm the one who's sitting above everyone because it gives me right to pass judgment on everyone else. And that's a big problem. Like that's like exactly what arrogance is. That's exactly what pride is. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us. Tafadhal.
Didn't like before Prophet that you used to judge by wahi, and then after that you used to judge by like
Judge what?
that I think it's just them. I guess I'm not.
Like judge what? Like if they're a companion?
No, not that. Like maybe they're Muslim, but I'm not sure exactly. But
Sure.
I think it's,
So how do you judge if someone like so after the Prophet ﷺ died, were there companions who would drink alcohol? Yeah, there were. Were there some who lied or who took from Bayt al-Mal, or like even some of them went to the extent of killing? I mean, the human beings, man, human beings. And at the end of the day, yes.
How would you approach that? Like, say, I remember one time I was in the Musalla on the women's side, and I was with one of my friend's younger sisters, and she didn't have her hijab on. And this woman like came up to us and started, saying whatever she was saying, being very judgmental. And I sat there quiet. Although I wanted to say something, I just wasn't sure how to say it. And she made her cry.
Yeah.
She turns to me and says, she said,
I
you're wearing niqab and you're with this girl with no hijab.
Yeah.
Like you're hanging around this girl.
Should have been like, I'm with you too. So what does that really say? You know what I mean? I mean, the thing is, dealing with such people are always going to exist, right? You know, we're always going to have people who feel like they can police others. It depends on the nature of the relationship, but sometimes if it really depends on the outcome that we're expecting from that person. Does walking away help? Sometimes. It depends. Like I had a person come to me one time. He was like, what is the ruling on wiping over socks or something like that? And I was like, well, I don't think he knew who I was. And then because I answered him, I was like, well, there's a difference of opinion. Some scholars, they allow the jawrab, and if you look in the Hanabila and even the Lahiriyah, and he was just like, yeah, but you can't wipe over your, you can't wipe over socks or something. And I was like, Jazakallah khair. And he was like, yeah. And I was like, Akhi, I said Jazakallah khair. And he's, what I mean? It just stops right there. There's another brother who was telling me, he's like, man, I came in to pray my 2 rak'ah, and he was like, Akhi, I'm Hanafi, I don't do this, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, I started talking to, like, engaging with him about like a hadith about praying or something like that. I was like, Akhi, all you had to do was telling him I'm not Hanafi. So I think learning how to engage with each other, that's something that we really need to learn, because we will always deal with all different kinds of people. But when people come to us, and if they come to us in an authoritative way, we can always ask them and be like, I'm sorry, you are who? Yeah, no, yeah. And it's like, I'm sorry, sister, what is your name? Oh, and it kind of throws them off a little bit and be like, do you work for the masjid?
That's why
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
to say, because some sisters who work for the masjid does that too.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about like a training.
Yeah, no, I'm saying, so the thing is, even with the training or sisters who do work, like, the other issue I have is like, okay, well, if there are sisters who are speaking like this, or there are sisters who are being condescending or judgmental, these people need to be brought to the administration. Is anybody above account? I'm saying, even if I say something wrong, does it mean, am I the ultimate authority? Like, no, the Imam has said, therefore, it's done. No, and I've had people come to me like, yeah, Sheikh, you said such and such, and that was totally wrong. And I was like, Jazakallah khair, man, I apologize, you're absolutely right. I made a mistake here. Or I'll be like, well, this is actually what I meant, and this is what it is. And they're like, oh, okay, yeah, so I mean, but the thing is, like, nobody is above reproach, right? No, nobody is above the law. Even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِن تَنَازَعْتُمْ فِي شَيْءٍ فَرُدُّوا إِلَى اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ, right? So even if you agree or you disagree on things, it's like, these are things, there's always going to be a higher authority. There's nobody, the highest authority is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Everybody else can be questioned. Like, nobody's above a reproach. But in such situations where people do come, like, they're coming super hard, like, they're coming to say something and be like, I'm sorry, who are you? And they'll be like, oh, well, I work for the masjid. It's like, okay, can we go talk to the imam? And I need you to come with us because I need to make sure that you say who you are, like you're claiming who you are. You have some kind of ID or something. So calling people out, it can help. Sometimes it just makes people angrier. So you have to make those judgment calls. Trying to make light of the situation sometimes helps, but again, it depends on how riled up the person is. The part of the problem, like specifically, I think with the women's side, is that there's no general oversight, right? You know, the women are kind of like in their own space, so because there's no openness there, you can always have, every time you create a vacuum like that where there's no oversight, you're going to have people take advantage of that. Like there's a power vacuum there, so what's going to happen is that people are going to come and fill that vacuum. It's natural. And what do I mean by that? So like on the men's side, if somebody says something crazy, there's somebody who's going to call them out and be like, well, no, that's not, you know what I mean? Like there's someone who can actually challenge them, but on the women's side, there's that representation isn't there. Which is a problem. It's a big problem for me. So, yeah. I mean, there's a number of issues. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's not convenient. It's not like, you know, I mean, there's a number of problems. Like, you know, anytime we place people, and it doesn't have to be women, right? It could be anyone. If you place people in a separate place, they'll feel like they're not part of the space. So why is it that, you know, for example, you can have kids coming to the masjid, not necessarily Dar al-Hijrah, but maybe even, right? Like, so like bad things happen at all masajid where you have the kids going to the masjid and they're kind of separate themselves from everyone else, and they're in a space where not everybody goes, and then you'll have girls who aren't wearing their hijab doing TikToks, or you'll have kids who are like smoking, like they're vaping or whatever. Why? Because they're in a space where they're not what? There's no oversight. So it's a human condition, right? Like every time we get into a space where we don't feel like anybody's watching us, what do? We keep pushing the boundaries, and I think that's a natural thing. It's the same thing there, man. Like when you have a power vacuum, people are going to fill it. If you don't have oversight, if you don't have representation from the masjid, people are going to feel like they need to be the ones who take that authority, and people who take that position. I have no problem calling such people out, but it really depends. No, because they're calling you out, right? You know, they decided to enter my personal space, right? They're voluntarily entering my personal space. I didn't invite them. I didn't be like, hey, sister, what do you think about this girl who isn't wearing hijab, right? You know, that's not, that didn't happen. And the thing is, it's like, once a person enters my personal space, okay, well, you committed the first violation. I didn't ask for you to be here. And you're not even coming at me correct. You know, you're not even being, you're not advising me.
Yo, brother.
It's like you're just lambasting me. You know what I mean? Like, and you're just attacking me, and it's like I didn't ask for that. That's not even what I was looking for. I don't even know who you are, right? And we have said time and time again, what is the best way to advise someone? Build a relationship, man. Damn, huh? Yeah. Yeah.
Because I think there's a lot of people who, even if you deliver things in a way that's kind, in a way that's like softened, they'll still receive it in a really negative way.
They can, and so that has to do with more of a conversation on like fragility and character. Because the thing is, like, in general, like obviously this isn't every single individual, but like this generation is a lot more fragile than the previous generation, right? They can't deal with, huh? See, look, already, look at that, already triggered. So like, so like, you know, this idea of like safe spaces and being triggered and blah blah blah. While I don't fundamentally have a problem with these things,
Like
those are more personal recognitions.
That, like,
yeah.
You could be close to potentially, like it happens.
No, for sure. It speaks more on individual character than it does anything else. Like if I'm not willing to be advised by people who I consider close to me, then what exactly am I looking for? If I'm surrounding myself with cheerleaders, then I'm not doing anybody any favors. They're not really your friends, right? They're stroking your ego because they want you to stroke theirs. That's it, right? And it's just like this narcissism game that goes back and forth. And you know, Allah protect us. So the next hadith, قال المصنف رحمه الله تعالى قال حدثنا أبو الطاهر وحرملة ابن يحيى وأحمد بن عيسى قال أحمد قال حدثنا وقال الآخران أخبرنا ابن وهب. So over here he's again showing the difference in how the hadith is actually being transmitted. Some of them said حدثنا and some of them said أخبرنا. قال أخبرني يونس عن ابن شهاب قال حدثني سعيد بن المسيب هاي شوافع أن أبو هريرة أخبره that Abu Hurairah radiallahu anh told him أن رسول الله, that the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم said أمرت أن أقاتل الناس حتى يقولوا لا إله إلا الله. يعني I've been ordered to fight the people until they say لا إله إلا الله. فمن قال, and whoever says لا إله إلا الله, whoever says لا إله إلا الله عصم مني ماله ونفسه إلا بحق, that his blood and his wealth is protected, or his life and his wealth is protected, except that which is due right. وحسابه على الله, and his affair is with Allah. قال حدثنا أحمد بن عبدة الضبي قال أخبرنا عبد العزيز يعني الدراوردي عن العلاء حاء وتحويل الإسناد وحدثنا أمية بن بسطام واللفظ له قال حدثنا يزيد بن زريع قال حدثنا روح بن العلاء بن عبد الرحمن بن يعقوب عن أبيه عن أبي هريرة on the authority of Abu Hurairah أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم, that the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم said أمرت أن أقاتل الناس حتى يشهدوا أن لا إله إلا الله, that I've been ordered to fight the people until they testify that there is no God except Allah, ويؤمنون بي, and they believe in me, وبما جئت به, and whatever I have come with. فإذا فعلوا ذلك, and if they do that, عصموا مني دماءهم وأموالهم, then their wealth, their blood and their wealth is protected, إلا بحقها, except with that which is due right, وحسابهم Allah, and their affair is with Allah.
In this copy it says
Yeah.
it didn't say
Umirtu?
it didn't omitted umirtu.
No, this is what it is in this. أمرت من قال لا إله إلا الله فكفر بما يعبد من حرمه. No, all of these begin with أمرت. Yeah, I'll go. Let me. Is there anything in the Sharh? Even in the Sharh. Even in the Sharh, I'm saying Umirtu. Yeah. What print is that?
The one you sent me.
That is on. Mine has umirtu.
Okay.
Nice. You found the type.
I found a typo. Yeah. Actually, this is the second time.
But it's yu'minu.
No,
Yu'minu.
hold on.
Half a noon, right?
Yeah.
أن يؤمنوا. Yeah. I started going the wrong way again. كم رقم الحديث؟
34, right?
In this one,
21 or 34, depending on the.
No, عندك. Yeah, Usman. Yeah.
34.
34. 33.
Page 32.
صح. Yeah. الله أعلم. I'll go back. I'll check the. What else do I have? I'll check the Dar Ta'sil. That one's a good. Is this a Dar Ta'sil print or is this a different one?
No, I don't remember.
Okay.
Let me go back.
قال حدثنا أبو بكر بن أبي شيبة قال حدثنا حفص بن غياث عن الأعمش عن أبي سفيان عن جابر عن أبي صالح عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم, they said that Abu Hurairah said that the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم said أمرت أن أقاتل الناس, I've been ordered to fight the people بمثل حديث ابن المسيب عن أبي هريرة, and it's similar to the hadith of Ibn Musayyib on the authority of Abu Hurairah. قال حدثنا أبو بكر بن أبي شيبة قال حدثنا وكيع وتحويل الإسناد وحدثني محمد بن المثنى قال حدثنا عبد الرحمن يعني ابن المهدي قال جميعا حدثنا سفيان عن أبي الزبير عن جابر قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أمرت أن أقاتل الناس حتى يقولوا لا إله إلا الله, that I've been ordered to fight the people until they say لا إله إلا الله, فإذا قالوا لا إله إلا الله, and if they say لا إله إلا الله عصموا مني دماءهم وأموالهم, then their blood and their wealth is safe or sacred, إلا بحقها, except with that which is due right, وحسابهم Allah, and their affairs with Allah. ثم قرأ إنما أنت مذكر, and then he recited, verily you are a reminder, لست عليهم بمسيطر, that you are not upon them like a warden. is that overseer? Overseer it might be. Yeah, overseer might. Yeah, well, I would like a warden. I guess I can see that. I can see that. So over here we have an addition of the recitation of this verse. What does that add? You are only but a reminder. You are not their overseer. You are not their warden.
You don't have ultimate control in people.
Yeah, that lady should have known that. And that told her to,
And also,
I guess,
the ayahs that follow also have
Yeah.
that, like, hisabahum.
Yeah.
It goes with it.
Absolutely. So here it tells us what our role is too. That what? That even if the people say La ilaha illallah, even if the people pray and they fast, right? There are things that they're going to do that I'm not going to like, right? Or there are things they're going to do that are not permissible. What is my job? Just to remind. Right? My job is to remind them, because I don't have control over anyone, right? I don't have control over anyone. قال حدثنا أبو غسان. Yes.
So what context is the hadith given in? So it says, fight them until you say that.
I wanted to talk about all the narrations, inshallah, and then I want to go back and I want to explain, because there's not too many. There's like 3-4 more narrations. قال حدثنا أبو غسان المسمعي مالك ابن عبد الواحد قال حدثنا عبد الملك الصباح عن شعبة عن واقد بن محمد بن زيد بن عبد الله بن عمر عن أبيه عن عبد الله بن عمر رضي الله عنهما قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أمرت أن أقاتل الناس حتى يشهدوا أن لا إله إلا الله وأن محمدا رسول الله, that I have been ordered to fight the people until they testify that there is no God except Allah and that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah, ويقيم الصلاة, and they establish the prayer, ويؤتوا الزكاة, and they pay the zakat, فإذا فعلوا, and if they do that, عصموا مني دماءهم وأموالهم, then their blood and their wealth is sacred or safe, إلا بحقها, except with that which is due, وحسابهم Allah, and their affair is with Allah. قال حدثنا سويد بن سعيد وابن أبي عمر قال حدثنا مروان يعنيان الفزاري عن أبي مالك عن أبيه قال سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول من قال, whoever says لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله وكفر بما يعبد من دون الله, and they disbelieve in whatever is worshipped beside Allah, حرم ماله ودمه, then his wealth and his blood is sacred, وحسابه Allah, and his affair is with Allah. قال حدثنا أبو بكر ابن أبي شيبة قال حدثنا أبو خالد الأحمر وتحويل الإسناد وحدثني زهير ابن حرب قال حدثنا يزيد بن هارون كلاهما عن أبي مالك عن أبيه أنه سمع النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول من وحد الله ثم ذكر بمثله. So in this narration he heard the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم said, whoever believes in Allah alone, and then he mentioned the rest of the hadith. So over here, all of these are hadith that say that I've been ordered to fight the people. What is the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam talking about?
those who didn't say that.
So he said, I've been ordered to fight the people until they say La ilaha illallah. Does this not go directly against the ayah, La ikraha fi din, that there is no compulsion in the religion? Huh? So how do we do wifq? How do we what's the word? What is wifq? How do we reconcile?
What was it again?
تفضل. How do we do wifq? يعني. Yes.
The annas is specific people, Quraysh.
What? Say that again.
Yeah, annas is not all people.
Uh-huh.
It's a specific people.
Okay, I've been okay.
Like,
So who?
Like in the Constitution, we the people.
Uh-huh.
Is not all human beings. Specific people.
I agree.
Who are these?
So over here, it's white Americans. But I'm saying at that time, right? So, but over here, umirtu an uqatil an-nas. So you're saying that I've been ordered to fight these people.
Yes.
Which people?
The Quraysh.
The Quraysh. So after you fight the Quraysh, you don't fight anymore. Like you don't fight the Byzantines and the Faris, like the Furs. the Persians, like he sallallahu alaihi wasallam did.
You do, but not from this hadith.
Not for this hadith.
I think
He sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying that, okay, this hadith, it applies except not to me.
No. It does apply, but this is just a sample, like a thesis statement
Sure.
that you can take and apply to other people,
Okay.
according to what you say.
Because shouldn't we fight the U.S. government then?
Huh? You tell me. Did I'm waiting. I'm listening.
So,
I'm just curious to hear what you guys have to say.
it's a moot, right?
Shabbat.
Huh?
It's a moot point.
It's a moot point.
Yeah.
Why?
You can, there is some obvious. If you take it literally, then definitely they go against each other.
Okay. So how is it the Prophet ﷺ would say something that goes directly against a verse? Yeah. Sure.
Like wasn't the weird thing that was like in it for every instance.
Okay. So you're saying there's specified instances where this applies. Okay. Yes.
So,
No. Hold on.
Could it be that the fighting of people applies to like the states versus the not? There's no compulsion of religion to divide.
Oh, it's individuals.
To the individual.
Zain. I like that. Huh. Tfadal, Miguel.
So the first hadith is the one that's most authentic, right?
Sure.
Right?
Is the most or the most complete, right?
Or the most complete.
Yeah.
So then the other hadith are supplementary to the first hadith,
Uh huh.
and this is
So you think the situation with Abu Bakr is meant to clarify what the Prophet ﷺ said after he died?
yes
Possibly.
about the zakat.
Okay.
Or implementation of the extension of the understanding.
And maybe it may be a possible understanding. I can see that. I can see for sure.
Was this talking about like during the war, like during like
The thing is, it's
Mm.
used to Anna,
Yeah.
and it's only applies to him. Not to,
Uh huh.
and then can apply to the Nasa.
So nobody else is ordered to fight.
Yes, with other verses, not this hadith.
No, when you take this hadith only, this is something which is khas only to him. Sallallahu
So I
alayhi
said
So define ikrah though. What does it mean?
compulsion. That's a good question.
Yeah. So
That's
maybe
actually a very
something
it's
different.
actually a very good question.
Yeah.
So what do I need to compartmentalize here?
Maybe ikrah doesn't mean like.
There's no compulsion. There's no forcing, right? So what? So if we understand that there's no forcing, well, what about the people who say like Islam was spread by the sword?
yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Is it not?
No.
It wasn't.
It was.
It was
They conquered states, right? But they didn't force them.
without the sword though.
No, they conquered states with the sword.
Okay.
And the citizens of that state were
Didn't they
persecuted.
give them-
They weren't
you
forced.
make an interesting point.
I didn't have
Didn't they give them an option? It's like
Yes. Yes, they did.
Muslim system.
Oh, okay.
تفضل.
I'm cheating, but
Ah,
it's for the people who are not Ahlul Kitab. Ahlul Kitab, you don't fight them.
like the Romans,
No.
What about the Romans?
like at Tabuk. Okay.
That was an accident.
That was an accident. It's like, my bad, we didn't know Byzantines were here.
So the people you're supposed to fight are those who are antagonistic towards you,
Zain.
and the people who, and you don't fight people if they want peace, right? Like if they ask for peace, you incline towards peace.
What if they're potential enemies? Or what if they have a better strategic location?
Yeah, that happened too. Like they enslaved more people at the Umayyad Empire.
Allah Akbar.
That the Prophet never said go enslave people. So the Muslim rulers did more than what they're supposed to do. Obviously.
I don't. I'm just eating my popcorn right now. Yeah. Yes.
What flavor?
Butter. or maybe spicy. I like the spicy spicy Cheetos.
that's the Cheeto problem.
Yo, it's fire, bro.
They make the takis popular.
Yeah. I'm not.
I don't know about that.
I don't know about the takis. That's a bid'ah qabiha. So even here, if we specify for the Prophet ﷺ, did he fight every nation? No. Did he fight every pagan tribe?
That's why when he said this is need to be a khas.
Yeah.
It's something general,
Uh-huh.
but its intent is specific.
Sure. What is the specific intent?
Meaning that when the Quraysh come and fight you, you gotta fight them back
Until they say La ilaha illallah?
until they say La ilaha illallah.
It's the mushrikeen that got out of it. That's what this
Okay. So were they pagan tribes that the Prophet ﷺ had silm with, or no?
He did.
He did. Why didn't he fight them?
It depends on the ayah. If the ayah came down. That's the treaties are done after a couple of
Sure.
months.
No, but this is a defensive, not offensive.
So what about Persia? What about Rome?
Even in the Jews.
Yeah. Or even.
I mean, those
I mean, it's a broader discussion of jihad, right?
that can be a political decision. It doesn't have to be a
Zain.
wahi decision.
Okay.
You know?
I agree.
The select
So
committee on China, select committee on.
I agree.
Philippines.
So here, if we look at fighting is war, right? So I agree with you though. I definitely think this is at a state level. And if we understand that this is at a state level, what are the tools of the state and how they have relations with other states?
Diplomacy.
Right, diplomacy is one, for sure. What is another tool I have? War is another one, right? What is another one? Embargoes, right? Right, there's a lot of stuff, right? There's a lot of
Trade
sanctions, right? You know, these are all state tools, right? These are all tools that the state have. War is definitely one of them. Did Islam invent war? Right? Like nobody knew what war was, and then Islam came. They're like, hey, there's this amazing thing called war, right? But war is pre-Islamic. There's no doubt about that. But Islam came to deal with a lot of society's problems, right? It came to deal with war. It came to deal with slavery. It came to deal with women's rights. It had to deal with a lot of the human existing condition. Like, you know, what the condition that humans were in at the time. What did it try to do? It tried to remove oppression from those individual systems. And one of those systems was war. Did Islam stop war? No, it kind of consolidated it and said, okay, these are the avenues that you can use war in, and this is how war is to be implemented. So what are some rules of engagement in Islam?
In war, don't kill somebody who did war.
Right, the people who surrender, right? You have to like the prisoners of war. Don't kill fruiting trees. Right, the elderly, right? Don't kill the elderly, women and children, right? These are people who are to be spared, right? So there are definitely rules of engagement that are there and that exist. So Islam came to kind of streamline those. Like, you can't just go out and start torturing people, right? That's not how it works. So the other part of it is what Osad actually touched on.
Isn't it something that did happen though?
There's a difference between there's law and then there's implementation. You know what I mean? No, I'm saying, like, there's law and there's implementation, right? Were there people who were forced to convert? I'm sure there were, right? Were there people, were old people killed? Yeah, absolutely. You know, were people abused and taken advantage of? Yes, I think that definitely happened. But
I've seen a lot of instances in places like in Iran, there is a very, deep-rooted hatred that they have of,
Sure.
associating that with, Islam.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, you know, even they're still salty. They had to change their alphabet. You know what I mean? Like, even Persian today is like they use the Arab alphabet. Like their original alphabet has been lost. So the thing is, like, you have cultural pride, right? And the cultural pride exists a lot today, like with the Iranis and the Turks. You know what I mean? Like, they have like this anti-Arab thing, but it's not an anti-Islam thing, right? There's a big difference.
No, I
Yeah.
mean, a lot of people associate it with being anti-Islam.
Okay, I mean, I don't know. I can't speak on everyone.
Which is what?
The Shia.
I'm not touching that one. But yeah, yeah. So
No,
yeah.
irrespective of religious faith, they just have that association.
So the thing is, that association is definitely there, but you also have to realize a lot of people, like, you know, and I don't mean to digress too much, but a lot of people who leave Islam. So now I think it's like what? It's like 25% of Muslims in the United States leave Islam or something. I don't know if you guys are like 20%, right? So it was a Pew research that was done. It's actually very good.
But it's the same amount that come in, so you're net zero.
Oh, ouch. So saying that out of that 20%, I think a majority of them are actually Irani.
Yes, true.
So the question comes, okay, well, why is that the case? The case is not because they have a problem with Islam. They have a problem with the way that it was implemented and where they come from. So they have, like, this is why it's not strange to find Iranis, like many of them who are just atheists or not practicing or don't care. It's because of the bad experience that they had with how the law was implemented there. Because you only have like two major, I don't even know if I can call the other ones, but like Iran is probably the only real theocracy that we have in the world today, right? Which is, the problem is, if you give Muslim clerics power, they tend to abuse it, right? Because it's not their thing, right? They don't know what to do with it. They're good with books, you know what I mean? They're good with books and they're good with teaching. You just don't want to put them in leadership positions. They tend not to do a good job, and I think that's, you know, aside from, you know, the belief, right, you know, which is a problem in and of itself, but like the way that it's implemented is extremely problematic, and people are reactionary to that. Even the people who leave in Islam in the U.S., why do they leave Islam? Is it because the majority of them are like intellectually convinced that Islam is wrong? No, there are people who are, you know, I'm not dismissing that, but a vast majority of people leave Islam because of what? Because of Muslims, right? Because of the bad experience that they've had. So there have been Muslims who have been sexually abused, verbally abused, physically abused, you know, whatever the case might be. And because of that experience, they're mad at the Muslims, and even their identity, right? They don't call themselves Christian. They call themselves ex-Muslims. Like, that's how mad they are, right? You know, and you think about that. Like, you know, think about the psyche of someone who, my identity is ex-Muslim. You know why? Because I'm so angry at this group of people that I will continue labeling myself, tying myself to that, versus embracing whatever the new identity is. Like, you know, I'm an atheist, or I'm a Christian, or, you know, whatever the religion is that they decide to take on. It's really strange. It's really interesting. But saying that, going back to what we were talking about, like, in general, like, there's no compulsion in the religion, meaning that nobody can actually be forced to convert. But was Islam spread through battle?
Yeah.
Yes, it was, right? That's not something that can be denied, and that's not something that should be shied away from. But it also depends on how we're framing the question too, right? If we say that, all right, Islam was spread by battle, people in general weren't forced to convert, I think a good question to always ask, and I think that's one that's missed, is like, okay, well, what happened to the conquered people?
They paid you.
Sure, some of them did, but did not some of them become religious scholars and imams?
Yeah.
Right? Which is unique. Like that's a uniquely Islamic thing. You don't find that in other religions, where a religion will come in, they'll take over, and then the people who are not native to that religion coming and rising to a rank, who are still referenced hundreds of years later, right? So even if you think like our hadith tradition, like half of our hadith scholars are not Arab. Right, or more, yeah, depending on, like, you know, the narrative you decide to follow. But it's like there's at the least there's a good number of them in fiqh. At least there's a good number of them, like kalam, right? A lot of the theological discussions and arguments, when like a lot of them were not Arab. A lot of the rules that have to do with like governance and stuff like that, a lot of them were not Arab. So even in the world today, do we as Muslims have a central Islamic authority? No, we don't, right? So the Indo-Pak region has their own institutions, like Malaysia and Indonesia, they have their own institutions. The Gulf states have their own institutions, North African institutions, they have their own, you know what I mean? Like, even Americans, you know what I mean? Like, you talk about like a completely new identity to Muslims, right? So Muslims, you didn't have a large rise of Muslims until like what it was like, I think with a little bit toward the end of like the Ahmadiyya Nation of Islam type of movement, where you had like a proto-Islam type thing. But you're talking about like in the 50s onward is where Islam was like formally in America. And now you have scholars who are American, who are recognized. Like, you know what I mean? It doesn't mean that, okay, the people in Saudi Arabia are going to listen to him, or the people in Malaysia are going to listen to this guy, but they're still going to have a revere and respect for this person. What other religion can claim that? I don't know of one. So having all of these foreign actors come into the religion and rise through the ranks, not politically, right? You can have people who rise through politically, but actually become like religious figures. That's amazing. Like it truly is amazing, and it's for me, it's one of the signs of the trueness of this religion, because this religion is about knowledge. This religion is about spirituality. It's not about like superficial, right? You know, when we talk about like it really is for taqwa, yeah. I mean, look at all the different people who have head positions. You know, in the religious sector, forget politically. I'm just talking about religiously. You know, have they ever had like a non-white cardinal or pope? And I could take shots at all religions, you know, for doing the same thing. But you might have people who convert to that, but will they ever become religious figureheads? Is it something to think about? So anyway, that's kind of the way I like to think about that, and I like to frame this idea of like. This idea of spreading through battle, like battle, yeah, battle is a part of it's like it's a human state, right? You know what I mean? Like, this is where humans are. That if I'm part of a state and this state doesn't agree with the policies of the neighboring state and they can't come to an agreement, what happens? War, right? It's going to happen. Like, ideally, you know, everybody gets along and everybody comes to an agreement, but sometimes people are just not going to come to an agreement. What do you do? The other thing that happens is like I know you guys were talking about defensive. No, like even offensively, man, there are preemptive strikes that happens because it's part of being a state, right? Like you're talking about politics at this point. Like we perceive that there's going to be a threat here. It could be strategic, right? Or it could be because like they just want to get some political clout. You know, you're talking about a lot of the Ottomans. You know what the highest rank for a Ottoman Khalifa was? Like what title he would seek? Qādī.
Oh, right. That they have it. Like,
Yeah, it's a big thing in them. Like Qādī, right? You know, why? Because like it was a big thing. Like, you know, for some cultures, man, war is a big thing. Like being head, and the thing is, even in certain branches of the military, like someone who's an ace, like, you know, someone who shoots down like, you know, five, you know what I mean? Like, Qādī means soldier in Persian or Turkish, I think. Yeah. So, but it's a title given to someone who went out to war and actually fought. So that's a title that was actually sought after. Yeah. So,
yeah, I was going to ask about the other verse that says Mashaf and Mashaf.
Yeah, I mean that.
How do you?
No, all that stuff is fine because the thing is, even in Islam, we have a jizya system, right? So if someone doesn't want to pay, I mean, if someone doesn't want to be Muslim, they have every right not to be Muslim. Like, you know, nobody can force to become Muslim. There are incentives to becoming Muslim for sure, right? But at the end of the day, if a person doesn't want to be Muslim, he has that choice. And you'll have non-Muslims who held political position, like historically. And it's, you know, in the tolerance of Islam it's very telling. It's actually very telling on how tolerant many of the Muslims were toward other groups. And not all of them were justified. Like, for example, if you look in the Mughal Empire, right? If you go to India, their scholars started allowing the marrying of Hindus. Think about that. Which is what? It's haram. Well, I won't say they're scholars, but I'll say like a lot of the politicians, they allowed legally to marry Hindus. And this isn't I'm not saying this as something like praiseworthy. I'm just saying it just shows like how tolerant people come, because Islam comes from a place of tolerance. Right? It doesn't come from a place of intolerance. Of course, it's haram for Muslims. There's no doubt about that. Like the scholars, they didn't support it, but many of the politicians were on that time, and they didn't see a problem with it. Told them.
I was going to say in political science, there's a discussion if there's such a thing as defensive weapons.
Yeah.
Because even a good defense is the best offense.
It's the best offense. Yeah.
So it's almost moot to try and make a distinction.
Yeah, I mean, like what is at the end of the day, what is defense, what is offense? Like, you know, you're the ones who drew the lines in the sand, and like, so, no.
It's kind of like a tangent.
Sure.
Like,
yeah, obviously we didn't go on any today.
Hinduism actually has two tiers of religion.
Uh-huh.
The upper castes are actually monotheists.
Uh-huh. Who is this?
The upper castes.
Of who?
Hinduism.
Okay.
So there's a caste system in the upper class.
The Brahmins.
Huh?
The Brahmins.
I don't know.
They're the highest ones, right?
Yeah, the upper castes. The few upper castes, they worship Brahman as just like one singular god, and he has attributes which
sure. They manifest in different smaller gods or something.
No, they're not. Look, it's pure,
they're just manifestations.
They're manifestations
of the same being. Yeah.
Pure attributes.
Yeah.
Then the lower tiers, which are the masses, are the ones that are idol worshippers.
Okay.
And that only happened through like years and years of the religion being polluted.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a
yeah, sure.
Ex-Hindu here.
Yeah, right.
So like the upper caste.
We should no. He's saying that we should strive to be the upper Hindus. Go ahead.
I mean, like the upper caste technically, like since they're monotheists. Like,
oh, yeah, okay. I see what you're saying. So you're like the argument for like why it would be okay to marry some of them would make sense. I mean, whatever, man. Jazakallah khair. Yeah, afattani. You're gonna say something, Miguel? No, خلاص. I think we'll stop here. This is a good tangent to stop on, alhamdulillah. Any questions before we end?
I think on our tangent, how do we advise a sheikh, someone who's knowledgeable, and like, you know, you might see something. How would you advise someone?
Like it depends. Is it like is it an aqeedah thing you'd advise them on, or just like in general?
No, just like maybe like conduct-wise, you know.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, there's nobody who's above reproach. So, would it make sense to stand up in middle of a class or middle of a khutbah and like start telling him what he's doing wrong? No, right? That's probably not going to go over well with him, and it's not going to go over well with the congregation. So the best thing to do is like, you know, catch him when he's alone and just be like, hey, you know, can I talk to you? That's all. Or you can make an appointment with me. That's easy. That's usually the easiest thing.
Oh, so he has something to say.
No, it's okay, man. I welcome. I enjoy being wrong, because it means I'm learning something.
Do you enjoy the debating?
Oh, I love debating. It's so fun, man. It's so fun.
That's because most people don't know how to do it.
Yeah, that's true. But it is enjoyable. I love the back and forth, how arguments are formed. You know what I mean? Like it's huh?
Is that considered bullying?
It can be if like if you're trolling the person, but like you should try to be sincere. I have to like with dini stuff, I'm usually pretty sincere. Like political debate, no. I'll definitely get into trolling. But خلاص, we'll stop there. والله أعلم وصلى الله على خير خلق نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. جزاكم الله خير. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. It's Hamza's here. It might be streaming. Yeah.